I've been carrying a secret for 15 years, and it's the kind of secret that sits in your chest like a stone. I destroyed my daughter's wedding day 30 minutes before she was supposed to walk down the aisle. 3 words came out of my mouth. The wedding's off, and everything that came after has been the cost of saying them. That's how it goes now. 3 in the morning, and I'm sitting here in the kitchen with the light off, just the glow from the street coming through the window, and my mind won't let me rest. It hasn't let me rest for 15 years, not properly, not the way a man my age ought to be able to rest. I'm 74 years old. My back hurts most days. My knees don't work the way they used to. I take pills in the morning and pills at night, and sometimes I forget which ones are which. The blue ones are for blood pressure. The white ones are for cholesterol. The small yellow ones are for something else, something the doctor explained to me twice. But I still can't remember. I line them up on the counter every morning like soldiers, and I swallow them one by one with water that tastes like the pipes are old, which they are, because everything in this house is old, including me. My daughter calls every Sunday. She's been doing that for 3 years now, every Sunday at 2 o'clock, like she's got it written in her calendar, and we talk for maybe 20 minutes about nothing much at all. The weather, her work, some show she's watching. She asks if I'm eating right. I tell her I am. We both know I'm lying, but she doesn't push it. She used to push it, back before everything happened, back when she still believed she could take care of me the way I'd taken care of her. Now she just accepts my lies and moves on to the next safe topic. We don't talk about the wedding. We don't talk about what I said. We don't talk about Marcus. We don't talk about the conversation I overheard that changed everything. We don't talk about the 15 years between then and now, all those years that just disappeared, all those conversations we never had, all those moments I missed. I sit here in the dark and I think about it anyway. I've thought about it every day for 15 years, every single day. Sometimes it's the first thing that comes to me when I open my eyes in the morning, before I'm even fully awake, just this weight pressing down on my chest, and the memory of Michelle's face when I told her I wouldn't walk her down the aisle. Sometimes it waits until I'm doing something else, something ordinary like washing dishes or watching television, and then it just appears in my mind like it happened yesterday, like it's still happening, like I'm still standing there in that hallway with my hand on the doorknob and my heart pounding and my mouth opening before my brain can stop it. 30 minutes before the wedding, that's when I heard them. I was looking for Michelle, my daughter, the bride. I'd been downstairs with the groomsmen, drinking scotch I didn't want, listening to Marcus's college friends tell stories I'd heard before. Stories about spring break in Cancun, stories about fraternity parties, stories about things that happened in their world, the world Michelle was marrying into, a world I didn't understand and didn't particularly want to. They were nice enough to me, these young men in their expensive suits, but I could feel the distance, the way they'd laugh at something and then remember I was there, and the laughter would get quieter. The way they'd edit themselves mid-sentence when they realized they were talking to the bride's father. I'd excused myself to find the bathroom. The venue was this old estate house, real fancy, the kind of place Michelle had dreamed about since she was little. She used to cut pictures out of magazines, wedding pictures, dresses, and flowers, and decorated halls. She'd show them to me at the kitchen table when she was maybe 9 or 10 years old. "This is what mine's going to look like, Daddy," she'd say. And I'd nod and tell her it would be beautiful, and she'd smile like I'd promised her the world. I remember those afternoons so clearly. Michelle sitting at our kitchen table with her stack of bridal magazines and her scissors and her glue stick, making these elaborate scrapbooks of wedding ideas. Denise would be cooking dinner, and I'd be reading the paper, and Michelle would interrupt every few minutes to show me something. A dress, a cake, a centerpiece made of flowers I couldn't even name. "Look at this one, Daddy. Isn't it pretty?" And I'd look up from my paper and I'd say, "Yes, baby. It's real pretty. Do you think Mama would like it?" And Denise would lean over from the stove and say, "I think it's beautiful, sweetheart." And Michelle would add it to her scrapbook, carefully cutting around the edges, carefully gluing it down, carefully building her dream wedding, one picture at a time. She was so meticulous about it, so careful. She had different scrapbooks for different themes. One for outdoor weddings, one for indoor, one for spring weddings, one for fall. She'd labeled them all in her neat handwriting, the kind of handwriting teachers always praised, the kind that looked like it came from a different era. I used to tease her about it sometimes. "Baby, you're 9 years old. Don't you think you got time to worry about weddings?" And she'd look at me very seriously and say, "I'm planning. Daddy, you always say it's good to plan." She was right. I did always say that. Planning was how Denise and I had built the restaurant. Planning was how we'd saved money, bought the house, made a life. And Michelle had absorbed that lesson completely, applied it to everything, including a wedding that was still 16 years away. She kept those scrapbooks for years. I don't know what happened to them. Maybe she still has them somewhere, packed away in a closet or an attic. Maybe she looked at them when she was planning her actual wedding, the wedding I didn't attend. Maybe she threw them away after, too painful to keep, too full of a version of her wedding day that included her father walking her down the aisle, her father giving a toast, her father dancing with her, while everyone watched and smiled. We'd saved for that wedding, her mother and I. This was back when Denise was still alive, back when we still had the restaurant, back when things made sense. We put money aside every month into an account we called Michelle's Wedding Fund. It started small, $20 a month, maybe. That was all we could afford when Michelle was little, and we were just getting started. But as the restaurant did better, as we opened the second location and then the third, we put more in. $100 a month. Then $200, then $500. Denise would check the balance sometimes and tell me how much we'd saved. "We're up to 8,000, she'd say, or 12,000, or 20,000. And we'd smile at each other, proud of what we were building, proud that we could do this for our daughter. Denise would joke about it sometimes. "She's only 12, she'd say. "We don't even know if she'll want to get married." But we both knew. Michelle was the kind of girl who would want a wedding, the kind who believed in fairy tales in the good way, in the way that makes you want to protect that belief because the world takes it away from people soon enough without any help. The restaurant was called Denise's Table. It was her idea to name it after her. I wanted to call it something else, something about the food or the neighborhood, but Denise said no. She wanted her name on it. She wanted people to know that a black woman owned this place, that the recipes were hers, that the dream was hers. And she was right. People loved it. They loved her cooking, loved the way she'd come out of the kitchen and talk to the customers, loved the way she made everyone feel like family. We worked hard for that restaurant. Both of us. 18-hour days sometimes. Denise in the kitchen, me working the floor. Both of us doing whatever needed doing. We'd open at 11 for lunch, and we wouldn't close until 10 at night. And even after we closed, there was cleaning to do, prep work for the next day, paperwork, inventory, 1,000 little things that go into running a restaurant that nobody sees. But we loved it. We loved building something together. We loved watching it grow. We loved the regulars who came in every week, who knew our names and asked about Michelle, who celebrated with us when we opened the second location and then the third. We saved every penny we could. We reinvested everything back into the business. And slowly, over years, we built something real, something that mattered, something that was ours. Michelle grew up in that restaurant. She'd do her homework at one of the back tables while Denise cooked and I served. She'd help bus dishes when she got old enough, maybe 11 or 12, carrying plates carefully to the kitchen, wiping down tables, folding napkins. She'd sit with the regulars, and they'd tell her stories and slip her dollar bills for being so sweet. Old Mr. Johnson would quiz her on her multiplication tables. Mrs. Davis would ask her about school. The Williams family would bring their grandkids in, and Michelle would play with them between the tables while the adults ate. The restaurant was family for her. It was more than just a business. It was the place where her parents worked, where her community gathered, where she learned what it meant to build something from nothing, where she learned that respect and hard work and treating people right could create something lasting. I remember one time, Michelle must have been 13, 14 maybe, and she was helping out on a busy Saturday night. We were slammed, every table full, people waiting by the door. And this one customer, a white man I'd never seen before, he was rude to her, snapped his fingers at her, called her girl in that way that's meant to demean, asked her if she even spoke English properly. Michelle came to the kitchen, and I could see she was trying not to cry. Denise saw it too. She wiped her hands on her apron and walked out there. I followed. Denise stood at that man's table, and she said, very quietly, very calmly, "That's my daughter you were speaking to, and in my restaurant we treat people with respect. All people. If you can't do that, I'll need you to leave." The man blustered, made excuses, said he didn't mean anything by it. Denise just stood there. "I'll need you to leave." And he did. He left. And the other customers, the regulars, they applauded. They actually applauded. Michelle watched the whole thing. And afterward, Denise sat down with her and said, "Don't ever let anyone make you feel small. Don't ever accept disrespect. You're worth more than that." I think about that moment sometimes. Denise teaching Michelle to stand up for herself. Denise showing her what dignity looked like. Denise being the kind of mother who protected her daughter while also teaching her to protect herself. And I wonder what Denise would have done on Michelle's wedding day. Would she have walked out? Would she have let Linda's words dictate her actions? Would she have chosen being right over being there? No, she wouldn't have. Denise would have stayed. Denise would have swallowed her doubts and walked Michelle down that aisle and danced at the reception and made the best of it. And then later, if things went wrong, if Marcus turned out to be exactly what Linda said he was, Denise would have been there. Michelle would have called her, would have trusted her, would have asked for help. Because Denise wouldn't have destroyed that trust on Michelle's wedding day. So when we saved for her wedding, it wasn't just about putting money aside. It was about honoring everything we'd built. It was about giving Michelle the fairy tale wedding she'd been dreaming about since she was 9 years old, with her magazines and scissors. It was about Denise and me looking at each other and saying, "We did this. We gave our daughter a good life. We can give her this too." And Denise died when Michelle was 16. Heart attack. Just like that. One morning, she woke up and said her chest felt tight, and I said maybe we should go to the hospital. And she said no. It's probably just indigestion. I'll take some antacid. But it got worse. She couldn't catch her breath. Her face went grey. And I drove her to the emergency room, going 20 miles over the speed limit the whole way, holding her hand while I drove, telling her to hold on, telling her we were almost there, telling her she was going to be fine. We made it to the hospital. They rushed her back. The doctors worked on her for 3 hours. And then they came out and told me she was gone. Just like that. Gone. I had to tell Michelle. She was at school. I had to call the school and ask them to pull her out of class, tell them there was a family emergency. I had to drive to the school and pick her up and see her face when she got in the car, see her looking at me, trying to figure out what was wrong, see her expression change from confusion to fear when she saw I'd been crying. I had to pull over in a parking lot and tell my 16-year-old daughter that her mother was dead. I had to watch her face crumple. I had to hold her while she sobbed. I had to be strong when I felt like my whole world had just collapsed. I remember everything about that moment. The parking lot was behind a grocery store. There were shopping carts scattered around. It was a Tuesday afternoon. The sun was shining. People were walking in and out of the store, carrying bags of groceries, living their normal lives, while mine was ending. Michelle kept saying no, over and over, like if she said it enough times, it wouldn't be true, like she could refuse to accept it and that would change reality. No, Daddy. No, she's not. She's not gone. She's at the hospital. We can go see her. She's not gone. And I had to tell her again, had to make her understand, had to watch her world break apart. We sat in that parking lot for an hour, just sat there. Michelle crying, me crying, both of us trying to figure out how to exist in a world without Denise. Eventually we drove home. The house felt empty, wrong, like we'd walked into someone else's house, someone who looked like us but wasn't us, because we weren't a family anymore, not the same family, not without Denise. I don't think Michelle ever really got over it. I don't think I did either. You don't get over something like that. You just learn to live with the empty space where a person used to be. You learn to set the table for 2 instead of 3. You learn to stop turning around to tell her something before you remember she's not there. You learn to cook for yourself even though nothing tastes right anymore, because Denise was the one who knew how to season things properly, who knew exactly how much salt and pepper and love to add to make it perfect. The restaurant changed after Denise died. Not right away. For a while, I tried to keep it going, the same way, tried to keep her recipes, tried to maintain what she'd built, but it wasn't the same. The customers could tell. They were kind about it. They kept coming, but I could see it in their faces. They missed Denise. They missed the way she'd come out of the kitchen with her apron on and her face flushed from the heat and that big smile. They missed the way she'd sit down at their tables and ask about their families and remember their orders and make them feel seen. I hired another cook, a good cook, a woman named Patricia who'd worked in fancy restaurants downtown. She knew all the techniques, all the proper ways to do things. Her food was good, maybe even better than Denise's from a technical standpoint, but it wasn't the same. Because Denise didn't just cook food, she put love into it. She put herself into it. When you ate at Denise's table, you weren't just eating collard greens and fried chicken and mac and cheese. You were eating Denise's grandmother's recipes. You were eating history. You were eating community. You were eating love. Patricia couldn't do that. Nobody could. Because it wasn't about the cooking. It was about Denise. The first location started losing money within a year. Not a lot at first, just a little bit each month. But it added up. I tried everything. New menu items, better prices, more advertising. Nothing worked. The second location held on longer, but eventually it started struggling too. The third location, the newest one, that one I closed first, cut my losses. Then the second. Eventually, I sold the original location too, the first Denise's table, the one we'd built from nothing. Sold it to a young couple who wanted to open their own restaurant. They kept the name for a year out of respect, but eventually they changed it. made it their own, which was right, which was how it should be. But it hurt. It hurt to see Denise's name come down. It hurt to walk past and see different people inside, different food, different everything. It hurt to know that the thing Denise had built, the thing she'd put her name on, the thing she'd been so proud of, was gone. I walked away with enough money to be comfortable, to invest, to make sure Michelle's education was paid for, and there'd be enough left over for her wedding fund. That wedding fund. Even after Denise died, I kept putting money into it every month. Like Denise was still there to see it. Like we were still saving together. Like the plan hadn't changed even though everything else had. It was the one promise I could still keep. The one dream I could still make come true. I couldn't bring Denise back. I couldn't make the restaurant work without her. I couldn't fix Michelle's broken heart or my own. But I could still save for her wedding. I could still give her that fairy tale she'd been dreaming about. So I did. Every month, without fail, I put money into that account. And I told myself that when Michelle got married, it would be perfect. It would be everything Denise and I had planned. It would be beautiful and meaningful and full of love. It would be the one thing I didn't fail at. Michelle was different after Denise died, quieter, more careful with things. She'd always been a little naive, a little too trusting. But after Denise died, she became even more so, like she was trying to hold on to something soft in a world that had just shown her how hard it could be. She threw herself into school, made straight A's, got a scholarship to college, business degree. She was smart, my daughter, is smart. She's still smart. But there's different kinds of smart, and Michelle was always the kind who believed what people told her if she loved them. She stopped cutting out pictures of weddings, packed away her scrapbooks, didn't talk about getting married anymore, not for years. Like she'd decided that fairy tales were for other people, people whose mothers didn't die, people who lived in a different world. I worried about that. I worried that I was watching my daughter lose her softness, lose her ability to dream, lose that part of herself that believed in happy endings. I worried about it more after Denise died because I didn't have Denise to help me figure out how to handle it. Denise would have known what to say, how to teach Michelle to be cautious without making her cynical, how to help her protect herself without losing that sweetness that made her who she was. But I didn't know how to do that. I was barely keeping myself together, barely getting through each day without Denise, barely managing to be a father when I felt like half of me had died too. So I just worried, and I watched Michelle grow up too fast, watched her become serious and focused and careful in a way that 16-year-olds shouldn't have to be. I worried when she went to college. I worried when she got her first apartment. I worried when she started dating. And I worried most of all when she started dating Marcus, her junior year. She called me one Sunday afternoon, excited in a way I hadn't heard in years. "Daddy, I met someone," she said. And I could hear the smile in her voice, could hear that she was happy, could hear that something had changed. "Yeah? Tell me about him." "His name is Marcus. He's studying finance. He's really smart, Daddy. And he's so nice. He opens doors for me. He walks me to class. He actually listens when I talk. He's not like the other guys I've dated." What was wrong with the other guys? Nothing was wrong with them. They were just, I don't know. They didn't really see me. But Marcus sees me. He asks me questions about myself. He wants to know what I think about things. He makes me feel important. I should have been happy for her. My daughter was happy for the first time since Denise died. My daughter had met someone who made her feel seen and valued and important. But something in my gut twisted. Something felt off. Maybe it was just that she sounded too happy, too convinced, too much like she'd found something she'd been desperately looking for. Or maybe it was the way she described him. Nice, smart, listens, opens doors, all fine qualities, all things a father should want in his daughter's boyfriend. But something about it felt performative, like Marcus was checking boxes, like he was being what Michelle needed him to be. I didn't say that. I said, "He sounds great, baby. I'm happy for you. You'll like him, Daddy. I know you will. Can I bring him home for Thanksgiving?" Of course. She brought him home for Thanksgiving, and he was handsome and polite and said all the right things. He had a good handshake. He looked me in the eye when he talked. He complimented the food, even though I'd ordered most of it because I still couldn't cook the way Denise could. He offered to help with the dishes and called me sir and laughed at my jokes and seemed genuinely interested when I talked about the restaurant business. I wanted to like him. I tried to like him, but something felt off. I couldn't name it then, couldn't put my finger on what exactly bothered me. He was studying finance. He came from a good family, or so he said. His father owned some kind of consulting firm. His mother was a lawyer. They had money, which was fine. I'd done well enough myself by then that money wasn't something that impressed me one way or another. Marcus knew about the money. Michelle had told him, I guess. Or he'd figured it out from the house, from the car, from the way we lived. And maybe that's what bothered me. Not that he knew, but the way he looked at things, the way his eyes would move around a room like he was taking inventory, the way he'd pick up a picture frame or look at a piece of furniture, and I could almost see him calculating its value. And the questions. So many questions. Questions about the restaurant, how I'd started it, how I'd grown it, how I'd known when to expand, what my investment strategy was now, what I'd done with the money from selling, what properties I owned, what my plans were for retirement. Questions that could have been innocent, could have just been a young man trying to get to know his girlfriend's father, trying to understand his background, trying to make conversation. But they didn't feel innocent. They felt strategic, like Marcus was gathering information, like he was building a file, like he was figuring out exactly how much I was worth and what that might mean for him. I mentioned it to Michelle once, carefully, trying not to sound like I was criticizing her boyfriend. "Marcus seems real interested in the business side of things," I said. She smiled. "He's studying finance, Daddy. That's what interests him. He thinks what you did with the restaurant is really impressive." "Does he?" "Yes, he's always asking me about it, about how you built it up from nothing, about your investment strategy." She looked proud. "He says you have really good business instincts." I should have been flattered. A young man, educated, from a good family, telling my daughter that he was impressed by what I'd accomplished. That should have made me feel good. It didn't. It made me feel like I was being sized up, like Marcus was evaluating me as a potential asset rather than as a person, as Michelle's father. But I didn't say anything. I didn't say anything because Michelle was happy, because she'd smile when she talked about him, because she'd light up when he walked in a room, because after Denise died, I'd watched my daughter move through the world like she was holding her breath, and Marcus made her breathe again. He made her dream about weddings again. That's what told me she was serious about him. One day, maybe, 6 months into their relationship, I came home and found her looking at wedding magazines, not cutting anything out, not making scrapbooks, just looking, dreaming. And she had that look on her face, that soft, hopeful look I remembered from when she was 9 years old. And I thought, this is it. This is the boy she's going to marry. And I felt my stomach drop. But I kept my mouth shut. Because what was I going to say? I don't like the way he looks at my furniture. I don't like that he asks questions about money. I don't like that he makes you happy. None of it made sense. All of it made sense. So I kept my mouth shut. I kept it shut when they got engaged after she graduated. I kept it shut when they started planning the wedding. I kept it shut when Marcus suggested we have it at the estate house, this fancy venue that cost more than my first car. And Michelle looked at me with those big, hopeful eyes, and I said yes, because I'd promised her a beautiful wedding back when she was 9 years old, cutting pictures out of magazines. The estate house cost $30,000 to rent for the day. $30,000. I almost choked when I heard the number. But Michelle wanted it. She'd seen it in one of her magazines, this beautiful old mansion with gardens and a grand staircase and ballrooms with chandeliers. It was perfect, she said. It was everything she'd ever dreamed of. And I had the money. The wedding fund had grown over the years. Between what Denise and I had saved and what I'd added after she died, there was close to $90,000 in that account. Enough for the venue and the dress and the flowers and the food and everything else Michelle wanted. So I said yes. I said yes to the venue. I said yes to the dress that cost $5,000. I said yes to the flowers, hundreds and hundreds of roses, Michelle's favorite, in pink and white, because she said those were the colors Denise would have chosen. I said yes to the catering, fancy food I'd never heard of, instead of the soul food from the restaurant like I'd imagined. I said yes to the cake, a 5-tier masterpiece that cost more than I used to make in a month. I said yes to the photographer, the videographer, the string quartet, the DJ for the reception. I said yes to all of it. Every time Michelle showed me something, every time she asked if it was okay, every time she looked at me with those hopeful eyes, I said yes, because I'd promised Denise we'd give our daughter a beautiful wedding, because I'd promised Michelle when she was 9 years old, because saying yes was easier than saying what I really thought, which was that this wedding felt wrong, that Marcus felt wrong, that something about all of this felt like a performance instead of a celebration. But I kept my mouth shut. I kept it shut when Marcus's family came to visit, and they looked at me like I was the help. I kept it shut when Linda, Marcus's mother, made comments about the neighborhood where the restaurant used to be, about how urban it was, with that particular tone white people use when they mean something else entirely. I kept it shut when Marcus's father asked me what I did now that I'd retired from the food service industry, like running 3 successful restaurants for 20 years was equivalent to working at McDonald's. I kept it shut when Michelle's future in-laws made it clear, in 1,000 subtle ways, that they thought their son was marrying beneath him. I kept it shut for 2 years, until I didn't. The hallway was long and empty when I walked down it. The ceremony was supposed to start at 4. It was 3:30. I could hear people downstairs, the string quartet tuning their instruments, the low murmur of guests arriving and finding their seats. I could hear laughter, conversation, the sound of a wedding about to begin. My tuxedo felt too tight. I'd had it tailored, but it still didn't feel right. I couldn't remember the last time I'd worn a tuxedo. Maybe never. Denise and I had gotten married at City Hall, just the 2 of us, and a justice of the peace and 2 witnesses we pulled in off the street. We'd been young and broke and in love, and we hadn't needed anything fancy. This wedding was fancy. Everything about it was fancy. The venue, the food, the flowers, the clothes. All of it fancy in a way that felt foreign to me, like I was a guest at someone else's celebration rather than the father of the bride. I was looking for the bathroom, but I'd gotten turned around in this big old house with its winding corridors and too many doors that all looked the same. The estate was beautiful but confusing. Rooms branching off rooms, hallways leading to more hallways, doors everywhere, and most of them locked because they were off-limits to the wedding party. I heard voices coming from one of the rooms, women's voices, laughing. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop. I want to be clear about that. I was just walking past, just looking for a bathroom, just trying to get myself together before I had to walk my daughter down the aisle. My hands were shaking. I'd noticed that downstairs with the groomsmen. When I'd tried to hold my glass of scotch, my hands were shaking. I'd told myself it was just nerves, just normal father of the bride nerves. Every father gets nervous before walking his daughter down the aisle. But it was more than that. It was the feeling I'd been carrying for 2 years, the feeling I'd been pushing down and ignoring and trying to talk myself out of, the feeling that something was wrong, the feeling that I was about to make a terrible mistake by staying silent, the feeling that if I walked Michelle down that aisle, if I handed her over to Marcus, I'd be failing her in a way I could never take back. The door was cracked open, maybe 6 inches, and the voices carried, and I heard Michelle's name. I stopped. I don't know why I stopped. Maybe I shouldn't have. Maybe everything would be different if I'd just kept walking, just found the bathroom, just splashed water on my face, and pulled myself together, and walked Michelle down the aisle with a smile. But I heard her name, and I stopped, and I stood there in that hallway, like a fool, listening to a conversation I wasn't meant to hear. It was Marcus's mother and his aunt. I recognized their voices from dinner the night before, the rehearsal dinner that Marcus's parents had insisted on hosting at some country club I'd never heard of. Dinner where I'd sat at a table with people I didn't know, eating food I didn't recognize, making small talk with Marcus's family, who smiled at me politely, but never quite looked me in the eye. Dinner where I'd overheard Linda talking to one of her friends about how interesting it was that Marcus was marrying into such a different kind of family. Where I'd watched Marcus's father hold court with his business associates, barely acknowledging Michelle's presence. Where I'd felt like an outsider at my own daughter's rehearsal dinner. She really is very sweet, one of them was saying. The aunt, I think. Her name was Patricia, or Pamela, or something like that. Almost too sweet, if you know what I mean. Naive is the word I'd use, Marcus's mother said. Linda. I remembered her name. Hard to forget a woman like Linda. She'd introduced herself at the rehearsal dinner with a firm handshake and a tight smile, looking me up and down like she was appraising livestock. But that's probably what appeals to him. Oh, Linda, don't be cruel. I'm not being cruel. I'm being honest. Michelle is a lovely girl, but she's not exactly sophisticated, is she? She still calls her father Daddy, for God's sake. She's 25 years old. They laughed. Both of them. Light, easy laughter, like they were talking about the weather. My hand was on the doorknob. I don't remember putting it there, but that's where it was, gripping that brass knob so hard my knuckles went white. Do you really think that's why he's marrying her? The aunt asked. For the money. There was a pause, a long pause, and in that pause I felt my heart stop. I felt the world narrow down to this moment, this conversation, these words I was about to hear. What else would it be? Linda said finally. Marcus could have his pick of women, beautiful women, accomplished women, women who actually understand the world he comes from, women from good families. Linda, that's not fair. Michelle is from a good family. Michelle's father owned a restaurant, Linda said, and the way she said it, the contempt in her voice, the dismissiveness, made something hot and sharp rise in my chest. A soul food restaurant. He did well for himself, I'll give him that. Managed to make something of himself despite his background. But let's not pretend it's the same as the kind of family Marcus comes from. My husband's firm handles Fortune 500 companies. My family has been in this city for 4 generations. We have a legacy. Marcus was raised with certain expectations, certain standards. And Michelle, well, she's lovely. But she's not that. Still, if Marcus loves her, Marcus loves the opportunity she represents. Linda's voice was casual, matter of fact, like she was discussing the weather or the menu for dinner, like she was discussing a business transaction instead of her son's marriage. The father has money, quite a bit of it actually, and no other children to leave it to. The girl worships the ground Marcus walks on and doesn't ask difficult questions. And Marcus is smart enough to know a good opportunity when he sees one. He'll have access to those restaurant investments, probably get himself set up in some kind of partnership situation. Mark my words, within a year, Marcus will be suggesting business ventures, investment opportunities, ways to expand the family portfolio. He's already mentioned it to his father, already has plans. That hit me like a punch to the gut. Already has plans. Marcus had been planning this, had been talking to his father about my money, about getting access to it, about what he was going to do with it once he married Michelle. Well, the aunt said, I suppose worse things have happened, and she does seem to make him happy. She makes him comfortable, Linda said. There's a difference. She makes him feel like a hero, like he rescued her from a life of working in her father's restaurant. She's grateful. She's obedient. She doesn't question him. She thinks he's brilliant simply because he went to the right schools and uses the right words. It's very convenient. That seems harsh. It's practical. Marcus has always been practical. It's why he'll be successful. He knows how to identify opportunities and capitalize on them. This marriage is an opportunity, a financial opportunity, certainly, but also a social one. Everyone loves the story of the successful young man marrying the sweet girl from humble beginnings. It makes him look generous, kind-hearted, not superficial. It's very good for his image. His colleagues think he's wonderful for not being shallow, for seeing past Michelle's background. And meanwhile, he gets access to her father's money and connections without any of the complications that come with marrying someone from our world, someone who might compete with him, someone who might have her own ambitions, someone who might see through him. You make it sound so calculating. Because it is calculating, and there's nothing wrong with that. Marriage has always been about practical considerations as much as romance. More so, actually. Romantic love is lovely when you can afford it. But Marcus can't afford to marry for love alone. Not with his ambitions, not with his career plans. He needs capital. He needs a wife who won't compete with him or challenge him or expect too much. Michelle checks all those boxes. And the father is too naive himself to see what's happening. He's so desperate to believe his daughter is special, so grateful that someone from a good family wants to marry her, that he doesn't notice Marcus is using her. It's actually quite perfect. I stood there in that hallway. I don't know for how long. Could have been 30 seconds. Could have been 5 minutes. Time did something strange, the way it does when your whole body is flooded with a feeling so big it doesn't fit inside your skin. I stood there, and I felt my heart pounding in my chest. I felt blood rushing in my ears. I felt rage building, hot and sharp, and overwhelming. I felt 15 years of being looked down on by people like Linda, people who thought they were better than me because of their family names and their fancy degrees and their country club memberships. I felt every moment of watching Marcus court my daughter while my gut screamed that something was wrong. I felt every doubt I'd swallowed, every concern I'd dismissed, every instinct I'd ignored because I wanted Michelle to be happy. And I felt Denise's absence like a physical pain. Because Denise would have known what to do. Denise would have seen through Marcus from the beginning. Denise wouldn't have let this happen. But Denise was gone, and I was the only one who could protect our daughter now. I thought about Michelle at 9 years old with her magazine cutouts, so full of dreams and hope. I thought about her at 16, crying in my arms after Denise's funeral, asking me why Mama had to die, asking me if everything was going to be okay, asking me to promise that nothing else bad would happen. And I'd promised that I would take care of her, that I would protect her, that I would never let anyone hurt her. I thought about her at 23, calling me from college to tell me she'd met someone special, someone who made her happy. The joy in her voice, the hope. I thought about Denise saying we'd save for the wedding, making plans, dreaming about the day our daughter would get married. I thought about my daughter's face when Marcus proposed, how she'd called me crying, happy tears, saying, "Daddy, I'm getting married. Can you believe it? Daddy, I'm so happy." I thought about every Sunday dinner where Marcus had sat at my table, eating my food, asking his questions, gathering his information. Every handshake, every time he'd called me sir, every time he'd asked about my investments, every time he'd suggested we talk business sometime, every time I'd push down that feeling in my gut that something wasn't right. And I thought about Linda's words. She's obedient. She doesn't question him. She's too naive to see she's being used. The father is too naive himself to see what's happening, already has plans. And I opened the door. Both women looked up, startled. Linda's face went pale. The aunt's mouth opened, but nothing came out. There was a moment of frozen silence where we all just stared at each other, them, with their champagne glasses and their expensive dresses, me in my rented tuxedo with my heart pounding and my hands shaking. I looked at Linda, Marcus's mother, this woman in her expensive dress with her perfect hair and her cruel mouth, this woman who just talked about my daughter like she was a commodity, like she was something to be acquired and used, like she was too stupid to deserve respect. And I said, "The wedding's off." That's what I said. 3 words. The wedding's off. Linda blinked. "Excuse me." "You heard me," I said. My voice didn't sound like my own voice. It sounded cold, hard, like something had broken inside me, and what came out was all edges. There's not going to be a wedding. I'm not letting my daughter marry into a family that thinks she's too naive to see she's being used. I'm not walking her down any aisle to hand her over to a man who sees her as a good opportunity, who's already making plans for my money with his father, who chose her specifically because she's obedient and doesn't ask questions. "Now wait just a minute," the aunt started. "You wait," I said, and I heard my voice getting louder, heard 15 years of swallowed anger coming out. "You wait and you listen. I've spent 2 years keeping my mouth shut about my doubts because my daughter was happy, because I wanted to believe I was wrong, because a father is supposed to let his daughter make her own choices. But I just heard what you really think. I heard how you talk about her when you think no one's listening. I heard you call my restaurant business something to be ashamed of, like feeding people and building a business from nothing is less than whatever it is your family does. I heard you reduce my daughter to a convenient opportunity. I heard you say she's obedient, like that's a quality to praise instead of a warning sign. I heard you say your son is using her, and you think that's perfectly fine, as long as it's practical. I heard you say Marcus is already making plans with his father about my money, and I'll be damned if I let her marry a man whose own mother knows he's marrying her for money and thinks there's nothing wrong with that. Linda stood up. Her face wasn't pale anymore. It was red, flushed with anger or embarrassment, or both. "How dare you? You eavesdrop on a private conversation, and then you have the audacity. The audacity!" I felt myself take a step into the room. "You're in my daughter's wedding venue. 30 minutes before the ceremony I'm paying for with money I earned feeding people while your family was doing whatever it is you do talking about how my daughter is too naive to see she's being used, how she makes your son comfortable, how this marriage is a financial opportunity, how my business wasn't good enough, how my family isn't good enough, how your son already has plans for my money, and I'm the one with audacity. Marcus loves Michelle. No, he doesn't. And you know he doesn't. You just said it yourself. You said he sees her as an opportunity. You said she makes him comfortable. You said he's being practical. You said she's obedient and doesn't question him. You said he already has plans with his father for my investments. Those aren't the words of a mother who believes her son is marrying for love. Those are the words of a mother who knows exactly what her son is doing and approves of it. You're taking everything out of context. What context makes what you said okay? What context makes it acceptable to talk about another human being? About my daughter? About a woman who's done nothing but try to be accepted by your family? Like she's a business transaction? What context makes it okay to call her naive and obedient? Like those are good things? What context makes it okay to say your son is using her and then laugh about it? What context makes it okay to say he's already planning how to access my money? The aunt was standing now too, her hands up like she was trying to calm a wild animal. This is all a misunderstanding. We were just talking, just making conversation. I know exactly what you were doing, I said. You were confirming everything I've been afraid of for 2 years. You were telling me that my instincts were right, that Marcus doesn't love my daughter, that he sees her as a means to an end, that he chose her specifically because she's naive enough not to see through him. You were telling me that he's already making plans for my money, that this whole thing is calculated, that your family thinks my family isn't good enough, but my money is. And you were laughing about it. You were drinking champagne and laughing about how your son is using my daughter on her wedding day. That's not... It is. I heard you. Every word. And I know what I'm doing. There's not going to be a wedding today. You can tell your son. You can tell him his bride's naive father figured out what he was up to. You can tell him that some of us still believe marriage should be about love, not opportunity. You can tell him that I'd rather break my daughter's heart today than watch him break it slowly over the next 50 years while he spends my money and treats her like a convenient accessory. I turned around and walked out of that room. My hands weren't shaking anymore. My heart was pounding, but I felt clear, certain, like I'd finally done what I should have done 2 years ago when Michelle first brought Marcus home. Like I'd finally protected her the way I'd promised Denise I would. Like I was being the father Michelle needed, even if she couldn't see it yet. I walked down the hallway. I walked down the stairs. The guests were starting to take their seats. I saw people I knew, people from the old restaurant, people from church, Michelle's friends from college, her old teachers, my cousins, Denise's family. They smiled at me, waved, looking forward to the ceremony, looking happy for Michelle, looking forward to watching me walk my daughter down the aisle. I didn't stop. I didn't smile back. I just kept walking, my mind replaying Linda's words over and over. Already has plans. She's obedient. It's an opportunity. I walked straight to the bridal suite where Michelle was getting ready with her bridesmaids, and I knocked on the door. The door opened. It wasn't Michelle. It was Sarah, her best friend, her maid of honor. "Mr. Johnson," she said, smiling. "Michelle's almost ready. Just a few more minutes and—" "I need to talk to Michelle," I said. "Oh, well, we're running a little behind schedule, so maybe after—" "Now. I need to talk to her now." Something in my voice made Sarah's smile fade. She looked at me more carefully, saw whatever was on my face, and her expression changed to concern. Is everything okay? I need to talk to Michelle. Sarah hesitated, then nodded and stepped back. Michelle, your dad's here. He needs to talk to you. And then Michelle appeared in the doorway. Michelle in her wedding dress. Michelle with her hair swept up in an elaborate style that must have taken hours. Michelle with her makeup perfect, her eyes shining, her face radiant with happiness. Michelle looking so much like Denise, it took my breath away. She had Denise's smile, Denise's eyes, Denise's way of standing with her shoulders back, confident and beautiful. And for a moment I couldn't speak. For a moment I just stared at my daughter and thought about all the moments that had led to this one, all the years of saving, all the planning, all the dreaming, all of it leading to this moment where she stood in her wedding dress, about to marry a man who didn't love her. "Daddy," she said, "what's wrong? You look—" "We need to talk," I said. "Right now. The ceremony's about to start. I'm almost— right now." I saw the smile fade from her face, saw confusion replace it, then concern, then something that looked like fear. The bridesmaids were all staring at me, 6 women in matching lavender dresses, their faces frozen in various expressions of shock and concern. "Okay," Michelle said quietly. She turned to her bridesmaids. "Can you give us a minute?" They filed out slowly, reluctantly, looking back at Michelle like they wanted to make sure she was safe with me, like I was a threat instead of her father, like they knew something bad was about to happen. The door closed. Michelle stood there in her wedding dress. I stood there in my tuxedo. And for a moment, neither of us spoke. She just looked at me, waiting, and I looked at her, trying to figure out how to say what I needed to say. How do you tell your daughter that you're about to ruin her wedding day? How do you tell her that the man she loves doesn't love her back? How do you break her heart to save it? "I overheard a conversation," I said finally. "Linda and her sister, in one of the rooms upstairs. They didn't know I was there." Michelle's face went very still. "What kind of conversation?" And then the words came tumbling out. I told her everything. I told her about Linda and the aunt and every word I could remember. I told her what Linda had said about the restaurant, about our family, about Michelle being naive and obedient. I told her what Linda had said about Marcus using her, about the marriage being an opportunity, about Michelle being too stupid to see through it. I told her about Marcus already having plans with his father for my money, about Marcus choosing her specifically because she wouldn't question him, wouldn't compete with him, wouldn't see what he was doing. I told her about my doubts, the ones I'd been carrying for 2 years, the feeling in my gut that something wasn't right, the way Marcus looked at things, the questions he asked, the way he seemed to be evaluating me more than getting to know me. I told her I thought Linda was right. I told her I thought Marcus was using her. I told her I thought she deserved better, deserved a man who loved her for who she was, instead of what she could give him access to. I told her I wasn't going to walk her down that aisle. I told her the wedding was off. I told her all of it, without stopping, without pausing, without giving her a chance to interrupt, because I knew if I stopped, I might not be able to start again, might lose my nerve, might convince myself I was wrong, even though I knew I wasn't. And when I finally ran out of words, when I finally stopped talking, Michelle just stared at me. For a long time, she just stared at me. Her face went through so many expressions, I couldn't track them all. Confusion, disbelief, hurt, anger, something that might have been understanding, and then definitely wasn't. And then she said, in a voice so quiet I almost didn't hear it, "You're serious." "I'm serious. You want me to cancel my wedding right now, 30 minutes before the ceremony, because you overheard Marcus's mother say something mean." It wasn't just mean. Michelle, she said. I know what she said. You just told me. You told me every word, every single terrible word. Her voice was getting louder. Marcus's mother is a snob, Daddy. I know that. Marcus knows that. Everyone knows that. She's never liked me because I'm not from the right kind of family, because I don't have the right kind of pedigree, because Grandma cleaned houses and you worked in a kitchen, and we're not old money, and we're not from the right social circles, and we don't have a legacy. She's made that clear since the day we met. She's made comments. She's been condescending. She's treated me like I'm not good enough for her son. I know all of this. I've known it from the beginning. Then why would you want to marry into a family like that? Because I'm not marrying Linda. I'm marrying Marcus. And Marcus isn't like her. He's spent 2 years defending me to her, standing up for me, choosing me over her approval, pulling away from his family because of how they treat me. He loves me, Daddy. I know he loves me. He's using you, Michelle. She went very still. The room seemed to get quieter, or maybe it just felt that way because of the look on Michelle's face. He's using you for my money, I said. That's what this is. That's what it's always been. His mother just confirmed it. He's already been making plans with his father, already planning how to get access to my investments. He didn't choose you because he loves you. He chose you because you're naive enough not to see what he's doing. That's not true. You heard what his mother said. I heard what you said, she said. I wasn't there. I don't know the context. I don't know the tone. I don't know what came before or after. I just know that you're standing here 30 minutes before my wedding, telling me that my fiancé doesn't love me based on one overheard conversation with his mother, who I already know doesn't like me and has never approved of this relationship. It wasn't just one conversation, Michelle. I've been watching him for 2 years. Watching him. You've been spying on him, evaluating him, looking for evidence that he doesn't love me. I've been paying attention to what? The way he asks about your life, about your work, about the things you accomplished. That's called taking an interest, Daddy. That's called caring about your family. That's called trying to build a relationship with his girlfriend's father. It's different when he's already making plans. Plans that his mother says he's making. His mother who hates me. His mother who's probably been trying to break us up from the beginning. And you're believing her over me, over Marcus, over the 2.5 years we've spent building a life together. I'm believing my instincts. Your instincts that have been wrong about everything else. Your instincts that told you to sell the restaurant even though everyone said you were giving up too soon. Your instincts that told you to be suspicious of every man I dated after Mom died because no one could possibly love me the way you think I deserve. Your instincts that have made you paranoid and overprotective and unable to trust that I might actually know my own mind. That stopped me. I'd never heard Michelle talk to me like that, never heard that anger in her voice, never seen that look on her face. How can you say that? I asked. How can you say I don't trust you when everything I've done has been to protect you? Because trusting me and protecting me aren't the same thing. She was crying now, full-on crying, tears streaming down her face. If you trusted me, you'd trust my judgment. You'd trust that I can tell the difference between someone who loves me and someone who's using me. You'd trust that I'm smart enough, strong enough, capable enough to make my own decisions and live with the consequences. But you don't trust me. You think I'm naive, just like Linda does. You think I'm obedient, just like Linda does. You think I'm too stupid to see when someone's taking advantage of me, just like Linda does. The only difference is that Linda has the decency to say it behind my back instead of to my face on my wedding day. That's not fair. Nothing about this is fair." She was sobbing now, her whole body shaking, mascara running down her face in dark streaks, leaving marks on her perfect white dress. "Nothing about this is fair. You're standing here ruining my wedding day, the day I've been planning for 2 years, the day I've been dreaming about my whole life, the day Mom and I used to talk about, and you're telling me it's not fair. You're breaking my heart 30 minutes before I'm supposed to be happiest, and you're telling me it's not fair. I'm breaking your heart now to save it from being broken later. You don't know that. You don't know what's going to happen. You're making assumptions based on one conversation you overheard, and your own paranoia, and your own inability to believe that someone could actually love me. That's not what this is about. Then what is it about, Daddy? What is this really about? Is it about protecting me? Or is it about you being right? About you proving that your suspicions were justified? About you feeling like you know better than me about my own life?" I opened my mouth to respond, closed it, opened it again. "I think it's about you not being able to let me go," Michelle said, her voice breaking. "I think it's about you holding on so tight that you're willing to destroy my happiness to keep me from making a mistake. I think it's about you still seeing me as that little girl cutting pictures out of magazines instead of as a grown woman who can make her own choices. I think it's about you and your fear and your grief and your inability to move on from Mom's death. And I think you're using Linda's words as an excuse to do what you've wanted to do all along, which is stop this wedding and keep me to yourself." Every word hit me like a physical blow. "Is that what you really think?" I asked. "I don't know what to think anymore." She wiped her eyes, smearing makeup everywhere. "All I know is that I'm standing here in my wedding dress 30 minutes before the ceremony, and my father is telling me not to get married. And I have to decide whether to believe him or believe Marcus, whether to trust your instincts or mine, whether to choose you or choose the man I love." "Michelle, I'm getting married," she said, her voice shaking but firm. "I'm getting married in 25 minutes, with or without you. Marcus's father can walk me down the aisle, or Sarah can, or I'll walk by myself. I don't care. But I'm getting married, and you need to decide right now whether you're going to be part of my life after today. Because if you walk out that door, if you refuse to walk me down the aisle, if you choose being right over being there for me, then I don't know if I can forgive you. I don't know if we can come back from this. I don't know if I even want to." I looked at my daughter in her wedding dress. I looked at her streaked makeup and her red eyes and her trembling hands and her beautiful dress that cost $5,000, that she'd spent months choosing, that she'd tried on a dozen times with a smile on her face. I looked at her and I tried to find the words that would make her understand that I loved her, that I was trying to protect her, that I couldn't bear to watch her make a mistake she couldn't undo, that I'd promised Denise I would take care of her, that walking her down that aisle felt like failing that promise, that Linda's words were still echoing in my head. Already has plans. She's obedient. It's an opportunity. That I couldn't do it. I couldn't walk her down that aisle knowing what I knew. But she was already turning away. 25 minutes, she said to the door, her back to me. That's how long you have to decide if you still have a daughter. I stood there, and I felt everything in the world narrow down to this one impossible choice. Walk her down the aisle to a man I believed was using her. Watch her marry someone who saw her as an opportunity. Smile for the cameras while my gut screamed that this was wrong. Dance at the reception knowing I'd failed to protect her. Live with the knowledge that I'd let it happen. Live with seeing Marcus use her. Watching him manipulate her. Seeing her wake up 10 years from now and realize I'd been right all along. Or refuse. Walk out. Save her from making this mistake. Save her from a man who didn't love her. Save her from a family that looked down on her. Save her from a life of being used, even if it meant breaking her heart now, even if it meant losing her, even if it meant she'd hate me, even if it meant being alone. At least she'd be safe. At least she wouldn't be with Marcus. At least I'd have kept my promise to Denise. Thought about Denise. What would Denise do? Denise would stay. Denise would swallow her doubts. Denise would walk Michelle down that aisle with a smile on her face, because that's what mothers do. That's what love does. It shows up even when it's hard, even when it's wrong, even when every instinct screams to run. But Denise would also protect Michelle. Denise would never let someone use our daughter. Denise would never stand by while someone took advantage of Michelle's trust. So what would Denise do? I don't know. I'll never know. Because Denise isn't here. Denise has been gone for 9 years. And I'm the one who has to make this choice. I'm the one standing here in this bridal suite with my daughter's tears on her face and my heart pounding in my chest, and 25 minutes until the ceremony. I'm the one who has to decide. I opened my mouth to say something, to apologize, to take it back, to say I was wrong, to say I'd walk her down the aisle, to say I'd be there. But the words wouldn't come. Because I wasn't wrong. I knew I wasn't wrong. Linda's words were still echoing in my head. She's naive. She's obedient. She doesn't question him. It's an opportunity. Already has plans. And I couldn't do it. I couldn't walk Michelle down that aisle knowing what I knew. I couldn't hand my daughter over to a man who saw her as a means to an end. I couldn't smile and dance and celebrate a marriage I knew was wrong. I couldn't do it. Even if it cost me everything. Even if it cost me Michelle. I turned around and I walked out of that room. I sit here in my kitchen 15 years later, and I can still feel the weight of that door closing behind me. I can still hear the sound, that soft click of the latch, that final, terrible sound that meant I'd made my choice. I can still feel it in my bones. I walked out. I walked down the hallway, and I heard Sarah calling after me. Mr. Johnson, wait, please. I didn't wait. I kept walking. I walked past the bridesmaids who'd spilled out into the hallway, their faces shocked, their mouths open. Sarah grabbed my arm. What happened? She asked, her eyes wide with panic. What's going on? Is Michelle okay? Is the wedding? I pulled my arm away. Ask her, I said. But we need you. The ceremony is about to start. You're supposed to walk her down the aisle. I'm not walking her down the aisle. What? Why? What happened? Ask Michelle. And I kept walking. I walked down the grand staircase. The string quartet was playing something beautiful, something classical I didn't recognize. The guests were seated, rows and rows of people in their fancy clothes, programs in their hands, waiting for the ceremony to begin. I saw faces I knew. My cousin Jerome, who'd helped me open the second restaurant. Mrs. Patterson from church, who'd known Michelle since she was baptized. Michelle's old math teacher, the one who'd helped her when she was struggling. All of them smiling. All of them happy. All of them waiting to watch me walk my daughter down the aisle. I walked past them all. Some of them called out to me, "Looking good. Must be so proud. Beautiful day for a wedding." I didn't respond. I just kept walking. I walked through the foyer, past the flowers, past the signs directing guests to the ceremony. I walked past Marcus, who was standing near the altar with his groomsmen, looking nervous, checking his watch, smoothing down his tuxedo. He saw me. Our eyes met, and I saw something in his face. Fear, maybe, or guilt, or confusion, or maybe just surprise that the father of the bride was walking away instead of toward him. I should have stopped. I should have pulled him aside. I should have told him I knew. I should have told him what his mother said. I should have given him a chance to explain, to deny it, to prove me wrong. But I didn't. I just walked past him like he didn't exist, like he was nothing, like he hadn't just spent 2 years pretending to love my daughter. I walked out the front door of that estate house. The sun was shining. It was a beautiful day. Perfect weather for a wedding. 75 degrees. Not a cloud in the sky. The gardens were in full bloom. Roses everywhere. Hundreds of them. Pink and white and red. Just like Michelle wanted. Just like she'd dreamed about. I got in my car. I sat there for a moment, my hands on the steering wheel, staring at the estate house through the windshield. I could still go back. I could still walk back in there, find Michelle, apologize, tell her I was wrong, tell her I'd been scared and stupid, and I was sorry. I could still make this right. My hand was on the door handle. I was about to open it. And then I saw Linda. She'd come outside, was standing on the front steps with Marcus and his father, all three of them talking. Linda saw me. Our eyes met. And she smiled, like she'd won. Like this was exactly what she wanted. Like she was glad I'd figured it out and walked away. And I knew I couldn't go back. I knew I'd made the right choice. I started the car, and I drove away. I drove away from the estate house, away from the gardens and the roses and the string quartet, away from the guests and the ceremony and the reception, away from Marcus and his plans, away from Michelle. I drove home, and I sat in my kitchen, and I waited for the phone to ring. I waited for Michelle to call and tell me she'd cancelled it, that she'd confronted Marcus, that she'd realized I was right, that she was coming home. I waited for hours. The sun went down. The phone didn't ring. I sat there in the dark, in the same kitchen where Michelle used to show me her wedding scrapbooks, where Denise used to cook, where we used to be a family. And I waited. But the phone didn't ring. Not that night. Not the next day. Not for 3 days. And I knew. I knew Michelle had gotten married without me. I knew I'd lost her. I knew I'd made a choice, and this was the cost. When she finally called, 3 days later, I grabbed the phone so fast I almost dropped it. Hello. Hi, Daddy. Just like that. Hi, Daddy. Like nothing had happened. Like I hadn't missed her wedding. Like the world hadn't ended. But I could hear it in her voice, the distance, the hurt, the change. Hi, baby, I said, and my voice cracked. There was a long silence. I could hear her breathing. I wanted to say so many things. I'm sorry. I was wrong. I love you. Please forgive me. But I couldn't say any of it, because I wasn't sure it was true. I wasn't sure I was wrong. We're back from the honeymoon, she said finally. How was it? It was nice. Nice. That's all. Nice. Michelle, I don't want to talk about it, she said quickly. I don't want to talk about the wedding. I don't want to talk about what you said. I don't want to talk about what you did. I just wanted to let you know we're back. That's all. Okay. Another silence. I'm sorry, I said. Michelle, I'm so sorry. I never meant to. I know. I was trying to protect you. I know. I thought I was doing the right thing. I know, Daddy. I know all of it. But that doesn't change what happened. That doesn't change that you weren't there. That doesn't change anything. She sounded so tired, so sad, so much older than 25. Can I see you? I asked. Not yet. When? I don't know. Soon? I don't know, Daddy. I just know I can't see you right now. I can't look at you without seeing you walking away, without remembering the worst day of my life. The wedding was the worst day of your life? Yes. She was crying now. Yes, it was, because it should have been the best day, and you made it the worst. You made me choose. You made me get married without my father there. You made me walk down that aisle with Marcus's father because my own father thought he knew better than me about my own life. You made me spend my wedding day crying. You made every moment of it hurt. And now, every time I look at my wedding photos, every time someone asks me about my wedding, every time I think about that day, all I can think about is you walking away. Every word was a knife in my chest. "I'll call you," she said. "I promise. But I need time." "How much time?" "I don't know." And she hung up. She didn't call for 3 months. And when she finally did, when we met at that coffee shop, nothing was the same. Nothing has been the same since. 15 years later, I'm still sitting here in the dark, still wondering if I made the right choice, still carrying the weight of 3 words. The wedding's off. Still waiting for Sunday at 2 o'clock. Still hoping Michelle will call. Still trying to believe that someday it might be enough. But it's not enough. It will never be enough. The sun is coming up now. Another day is starting. I should get up. I should take my pills. I should pretend to be okay. But I'll sit here a while longer. I'll sit here, in my kitchen. I'll think about Michelle. I'll wait. That's all I have left. The waiting, and the wondering, and the wait. Always the wait.